guys, welcome to another episode of the Agent Boost Marketing Podcast. We're getting going here. I'm getting distracted by my actual replacement for last week. Maybe if some of you noticed, there was a different bald white guy with a beard appearing alongside Dan. We had Brian Smith here. I was traveling down in Florida at the ICMG conference that we'll kind of get into a little bit and give some highlights. But wanted to kick it over to Dan. Where do you want to start today?
Let's start really quick. More updates on the CMS call letter. I think that, the one thing that we want to convey to, I guess, the marketplace, to carriers, to brokers, to people who are listening to the podcast is that we've kind of taken the approach of this call letter to where we are very involved. So like as an organization, we're on calls with policy specialists in DC, with other actuarial firms, people like this who are very much in the conversation with what's happening. However, but we're not out there leading the charge, telling people to like write a letter, do the, because basically in all of our conversations with the high level people, their minds are made up. The call letter was pretty much, here's your notification of what's going to be happening, and there's going to be some really small concessions to meet in the middle. But the reality is 90 to 95% of what they're proposing is going to go in as written. So I think, but I just want to let people know that we're not obtuse. We're not like disengaged. We're very much on top of that, but we're rather instead we're spending our time as an organization trying to plan ahead for what that's going to look like and make sure that we're providing great solutions for everybody else, rather than focusing our time on what we think is, kind of time not well spent. Yeah,
I have another classic Mike pop culture reference where I'm likened to be like the bald eunuch in Game of Thrones, Viserys, where we're out there with our whisperers all over in the industry. And so that's the way the approach that we're taking it, rather than Dan said, like leading the charge, is we have our birdies out across the continents and in all these different industries and carriers and lobbyists and agents and people who are involved, kind of giving us information back. And we had some good calls the last couple of days. Getting some more clarity. And overall, we're feeling very positive, like we always were, about what's to come.
But to kind of expand on what you're saying, for example, we heard today on one of our calls that, Senator Wyden is, continuing down this path. And I think some of what's kind of going on right now is they're trying to determine if they want to kind of proceed with everything happening. Is it a political win or a loss still? And it hasn't quite been determined. But I know Wyden's office is doing a 6-month secret shopping campaign where they're actually calling brokers. So, maybe you're going to get a call from somebody who is a secret shopper that he's kind of, commissioned, so to speak, to conduct some secret shopping over the next 6 months as we get closer to election time and closer to AEP.
Yeah, a couple nuggets that were interesting were a lot of these these staffers of these congressmen, of these the Senate Finance committees, their staffers, a lot of them didn't even understand and know what an FMO is, because what we do, because it's pretty complicated. It's one of those things where sometimes you meet people and you go, I didn't know somebody could make money in this world by doing something like that. And that's kind of what an FMO was. And I think a lot of these senators, these government entities and their staffers didn't actually know how the sausage was made. Mm-hmm. And so as part of this, they're like, I'll give them credit a little bit, where they're like, well, if we're going to nuke this thing and make this major disruption, at least maybe we should try to understand what it is that we're going to disrupt. And I do think, like you said, that's mostly because they don't know how does this pencil out for a win or a loss politically overall.
I think the biggest message was, again, the message that, they're obviously, like Washington, Congress, they're motivated by constituents, right, and voters. And the noise that they're hearing is, this Medicare Advantage business is, we have a lot of complaints from consumers, and it's got to be those commercials and XYZ. And I think that the the message that they initially thought was there's a lot of bad actors and brokers and we got to rein this in because we have so many complaints.
And that's how all agents are doing business, is they're all
Right.
getting these ads from Joe Namath.
Correct.
And they're all scamming and spamming elders.
And so now it's kind of gotten all the way to it's reached their desk and they're trying to deal with it and how they know. And to your point, most of them have staffers in their 20s. They're younger, fresh out of college, extremely bright, intelligent people. But, you know, for a 20-something-year-old person to be like, oh, yeah, I know all about the Medicare program and how it's administered and MA and FMOs and distribution is not known. And they're just now they're now uncovering and figuring out what it is that we really do. And so they're trying to that point, decide if we do these sweeping changes, like it's almost like, you know, equal and opposite reaction. If we do something, what's going to be the fallout from that? And so we have been, from our end, having these conversations with people who are talking to the policymakers, and we're saying, hey, you know, regardless of what you guys decide, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. If you do that, this is what's going to happen. And we are giving them feedback that way. Now, whatever they decide is, you know, in their court. And again, I think it's going to be 90-something% of what they said. I think we're going to land at, again, those higher FMV rates, eliminating a lot of those alternative agent payments. I think we're going to land with, you know, again, I hope this podcast, these episodes age very well. And we're going to look forward a year and be like, ha, we were right. Spot on. We were exactly right. But I also think that they're talking about regulating like the FMO distribution tiers, you know, where they don't want one carrier paying a higher distributor amount versus other carriers, and they might regulate and rein that in.
Centralize it, standardize it.
Yeah, if they standardize distributor commissions, I just, wow, that's going to so hurt the smaller carriers that just don't have infrastructure and processes and like that agent experience like in place. It's going to absolutely hammer them. Yeah,
and that's interesting because a lot of the noise and why this was kind of taken up, a lot of these smaller and mid-tier insurance carriers are actually payers. They're actually the ones that were kind of complaining, saying they don't have the dollars to compete with the big co-op dollars to these big national distributors and call centers and things like that. And so they were kind of some of the ones from a corporation perspective that were complaining. And we're sitting here going, you don't necessarily know what you're asking them to correct, because if they do what they want, it's going to make it much more difficult for you to compete, not easier, because all these big carriers nationally that have these synergies and these economies of scale are going to be able to just steamroll you even more without you being able to compete, you know, on a local level. So that's been another thing that's interesting, as these senators and this committee's kind of taken up arms on their behalf, as there's potentially a lot of difficulties for them ahead.
Yeah. And I had a call with somebody today from a large carrier. I won't say who. I'm not going to name names this time. But and they agreed and said, you know, we're sitting back watching what's going to happen. We agree that we think this is what's going to occur with the call letter. We're just waiting to see what processes we have to change as far as our distribution hierarchies, things to run through L&C with legal and compliance. We're going to obviously, you know, be quick to adhere to, you know, the final ruling from this, which apparently we're going to hear like probably in April, you know, the final ruling. So we're not too far away. But essentially, they said, you're right, and we can sit back and this is going to be great if it goes in like as proposed, because if they do level out all the tiers for distributors and what their commission levels are, we're going to win. Because, you know, do I want to go if I'm a distributor, do I want to go write this very large carrier that has a great agent experience and a lot of visibility and transparency in enrollments and submissions and what's active and ease of doing business and reliability and all those things? Or am I going to go write this other carrier who doesn't have like a broker portal and, you know, doesn't have, if I submit an application, I can't even see if it was rejected or accepted. They don't pay commissions in a timely order. Am I going to go write this plan or that plan? That's an easy choice for a broker. So I think from their messaging was, hey, we're not going to fight this rule because this will work out great for us.
Yeah, I mean, it would almost be a resetting of the table a little bit to back how the industry was 10 years ago or 12 years ago, when there were only a handful of major carriers. And it's really been in the past decade that some of these mid-level insurers and payers kind of really jumped into Med Advantage and have kind of been sneaking away market share and winning in some of these markets with the small and local carriers too. And so, we think that if it panned out exactly the way it was, it'd make it easier for the bigs and harder for the mids and small tier guys.
Correct. The other thing that I have been messaging back to people who are asking, not that like, look, to be clear, it's not like I'm in Washington, doing like a, like on Silicon Valley or something where I'm like in front of
Mr. Dan goes to Washington with his briefcase.
It's not like that. But what I will say is, I think again the perception was all these consumer complaints from the senior population, and it's like, let's start investigating. And I think initially the thought was the brokers are the bad actors. It's all these people doing these enrollments to the seniors. They're the ones causing the problems, where I'm actually pushing back to people and from the bottom up to say, actually, it's CMS's policies, like with the, again, you think about all the movement and people getting their plans changed constantly all the time, and how if you're a broker listening, you used to have like your lifetime value, your LTV was much longer years ago. And now like people are after your book of business trying to plan change constantly. But the government created that by having the DST, like the COVID era, with the disaster election codes that just remained open indefinitely, where it was the wild, wild west. There wasn't really a defined locked in open enrollment like AEP or OEP period. You could plan change somebody anytime, and it stayed that way for like 3 or 4 years. And so that period of time, along with, there are carriers out there who I still will continue to call them out. They go into marketplaces, they gain a lot of market share. And then what happens, because when you file a new plan, you get a 4-star rated funding. So you get a pretty high funding level. When you have no membership and you're at a 4-star rating, you can be aggressive with benefits. So you can offer these really aggressive benefits, grow your membership to 30, 50, 100,000 members. And then of course, you cannot be aggressive with your benefits at that point, because if you make one PCP change or copay change, it costs you $30 million. So then what they'll do is they'll spin up another plan that's aggressive with benefits and siphon and move as a strategy membership back and forth between the plans. And so CMS hasn't.
Well, and then one carrier does that in the market, and then the other carriers maybe that didn't want to do it have to introduce a plan that has similar benefits. Otherwise, they're going to lose their membership to that new plan. So they all have to do it. And then as one goes, they all go.
And then suddenly you go from, like, if you look at the KFF.org stuff and the plans available to people, on average, people now have, like the average MA consumer has like 50 different MA plans, PBPs, Hickens, whatever, available from varying companies in their marketplace. That's the average. But there's some marketplaces in Southern California, in Arizona, in Florida, in Texas, where there's hundreds, like 150 or more to choose from. And so it's like, okay, it's good to have choice, but when they're not limiting the number of plan filings that a carrier, they should step in like they did on the ACA in the individual marketplace and said, hey, there's no reason that you have to have 7 different bronze plans in this marketplace. There's not enough of a distinction between these plans to where it justifies it. You need to slim down your portfolio. They should do that with carriers, and they should limit the number of filings that they have. And also, if they grow a plan, they have their actuaries, they bid on something, and they make a plan filing, they need to make their bed and lie in it. They need to eat it a year or two later when they get more utilization or X, Y, and Z, because then they're going to approach the market more cautiously, because if they screw it up, they're like, oh, well, we'll just like nuke it. We'll just start a new plan and we'll just like crosswalk the business over to this other plan. So again, I think these are all things from the top level that if we want to create more stability in the Medicare Advantage marketplace, those are some of the, I would say, more significant changes that should be happening from that top level to create a lot more stability in the market, not the broker that's driving around in their car or selling on their phone, like writing 50 or 100 apps a year. That's not the problem.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really driven home to what like our theme for the whole year is for agents is optimization, quality, and really trying to write good quality business, keep those people as long as possible. I mean, that's always been our strategy, but that's the way these plans are actually designed to be effective. That's the way they're actually, the model of care is actually based around consistency. These plans are not designed on the ACA or the Medicare side of things to like, I'm going to change like I change my with the seasons, where we see these people who are on 2 or 3 or 4 plans throughout the year, and you go, that's just terrible delivery of care. It's a terrible experience for everybody involved, for the consumer, for the agent, the carrier, the providers. I mean, there's no consistency there. Consistency is actually what these plans are designed for.
Right. And we don't want to make the whole episode about this, but yes, we've talked about it a lot with our brokers. We try to spend time to explain this, but going back to VBEs and HRA and the intention behind it and everything else, these carriers don't play nice with each other. It's not like if you have a member on, again, I'm just throwing out an example. Let's say somebody's on Aetna and they go to, United Healthcare. United Healthcare knows nothing about that new member. They don't know really at that point the claims that they're taking on. They don't know what meds they're taking. They don't know if they need home health care. There's that whole transition of care process, talking about model of care, where the carrier will kind of start to figure out what that member looks like after 3 to 6 months. And then they're figuring out their needs, assessing that. They're getting a good working baseline. They know, hey, based on these medications, we think that these people have, or this person has these particular health conditions. Please sign up to meet with one of our care managers or case managers. They're trying to dig deeper. And again, the more that they know, the better they can do. It's disruptive and it's bad when you have brokers in the market saying hey, go onto this plan, use your benefit for this healthy thing to get your ski pass or your e-bike or whatever it is, and use this, or get on this plan and maximize out the dental benefit for 3 months and then drop your plan and go somewhere else. I mean, those kind of behaviors are the exact opposite of what CMS and what carriers want, and candidly what we want. We want to, I would take all day long less volume and sell a little bit less and get quality business that's going to stick around for a long period of time than higher numbers with all this volatility.
Yeah, it's just so chaotic to manage. So, we kind of wanted to also talk about, I went down last week. I was at that ICMG conference, Intercompany Marketing Group or something. It wasn't one that we'd gone to before, and it was good. It was valuable. Those kind of trade shows are always good. We get value out of them by, going and meeting with industry connections very quick. A lot of times at the top, that's how deals are done. You got to be in the room where it happens to kind of make those high level decisions. And so just like last year, we missed those type of in-person connections when it was the COVID years, so to say, and nobody was doing that. But it was really good. I was kind of just trying to sum up my takeaways from that show, but we talked a little bit about it today on our call. There's kind of a two-headed dragon facing the industry right now, with this whole compliance thing that we've been talking about and the potential changes from CMS, but then also on the lead generation side of things, with the FCC changing how the lead generation is happening, and we're already seeing that massively disrupting lead generators over the past 30 to 60 days. And that was a big theme of people that were trying to figure that out, especially anybody I know call centers kind of have a bad, it's like the bad reputation because some of them were, the impetus for some of these changes, but legitimately there will be, and always it's a effective way of helping a lot of people at scale in theory. But there's a lot of the call centers are trying to figure out, hey, what's the new world look like? How are we doing this compliantly? How can we actually get in front of people?
Here, people need to realize too, the genie is not going back in the bottle, in the sense that I joke about it all the time. Whether you want to be selling over the phone or not, you have to some degree or another. You cannot even just be the agent who wants to meet at the kitchen table, because the consumer, they want to, I always joke, be at home in their underwear, eating Cheetos, watching The Price is Right, and just, call somebody and get it done. That's their preference. And especially over these last couple of years, the way that they shop and buy, and that's their choice. So I always am of the belief, and this is what we try to do, is we let the consumer pick, just like we let agents pick, and we say, hey, you know what type of an agent do you want to be? Do you want to be a captive? Do you want to be non-captive? Do you want to, have this, that, or the other? You pick. We don't care. And that's how I think it is with the consumer. We want them to make the decision on their buying preferences. But again, a lot of them want to do it remote. So let's not be naive and pretend like these call centers are going to go away, because they're not. The only hope is that some of the bad actors are going to eventually get, kind of weeded out over time. The other thing, of course, that we've talked about is, it's great when all these regulations go into effect, the good people, the people who actually care about legal and compliance and everything else, are going to follow the rules. But there's going to be all these offshore call centers, that are, again, in other countries. They're still going to continue to do what they do and try to sell these leads that are non-compliant to people. That's what I would caution agents and agencies about, is that they don't follow the rules. Just kind of like we talk about like gun legalization or not, like, criminals don't care if it's legal to carry a gun or not. They're going to carry a gun. Yeah. So it's the same thing with this. Like, we can come out with all these FCC rules and TCPA compliance and all this stuff, but the people who are not following the rules are still not going to.
Yep.
And they're going to have these leads and they're going to try to sell them. And so we're just going to continue to caution the agents and agencies, vet them really good, make sure that you're buying something that is compliant. Because at the end of the day, if you go sell that customer and there's ever a complaint and they say, hey, carrier's like, how did you get this customer? How did you get this contact? Where's the lead? And you provide it. It's your butt that's in the hot seat, not the vendor.
Yeah. So unfortunately, they correct it from the bottom up, not the top down, because they can't go in and just eliminate all these bad actors. So they're going to put the onus on the agents to actually make sure that, and the agencies and the entities like us, to make sure that our lead sources are vetted. And so one of the things that I was seeing is a lot of people that have hybrid businesses like us, where they have some field, some teledigital distribution and things like that. Everyone's out there kind of going, well, how do we do business now? Because we can't knock doors. We can't market this way. We can't do this lead generation way. We can't send certain things out to mail for this population. Now the FCC is saying that there's no more co-reg leads, which I actually think is a good thing. But then what happens is it just makes everything needs to be, this is the new buzzword is consumer generated, right? Where marketers can't go blow people up, telemarketing them all day long, and find the senior watching The Price is Right in their underwear, who finally gets sweet talked into getting transferred off to a different call center, who gets sweet talked into change their plan into a plan that doesn't take their doctors. That's gone away, right? Which it's good. Theoretically is going to be going away, which is good. But even in a legitimate sense, when people can't go market, they can't go look for people to help and look for people to sell. They have to wait. It's almost like you have to wait for people to come to you and express the interest, and then find those people when the mood's striking them right. It's much more expensive, much more difficult, much more rare to get a hold of those people. So everyone's trying to figure out that new world.
So I think you're going to have top and bottom to that, meaning that, and two things. I think it's going to take 2 to 3 years for that marketplace to dry up. So especially for those bad actors to go away, eventually what's going to have to happen is people are going to have to stop buying from them and stop creating the marketplace for them. And so over time, it's going to have more brokers being educated, more agencies being discerning and being like, hey, we can't buy your leads. We can't work these. These aren't compliant. There has to be more and more of those people turning away those bad actors in order for that marketplace to dry up. It's going to take time. The other thing with that is top and bottom. So from what you were saying, and it's true, leads are going to be so much more expensive. Now they're already starting to be, and they're going to be, and I'm predicting that lead costs might triple or sometimes 4 or 5x from what they are. With that cost, the small to mid-sized people can't afford to play in that ball game. It just is going to price them out of the market. So the bigs are going to get bigger at the top. But then if you're like an independent agent listening to this, it goes back to your roots, because if you're not understanding yet, the way to win is creating all those synergies and those referral sources and partner sources and, funeral homes and tax planners and other professionals who work with your same target audience. Because going back to it, you're now seeing like all these privacy policies that I joke about, and I'm like, oh, so after we kind of, pillaged everybody, and digitally accosted people and mined and stole all your private information, and, my phone listens to everything that I say, and I get an ad on something, 5 minutes later, suddenly we're like grandstanding, like with Apple's new updates and Facebook, and like, oh, we care about privacy. It's like, oh,
yeah,
we care about privacy 10 years later? Huh. Okay. But that's making it so much harder. And again, it's it's a ball game that the bigs are going to be able to compete in and the little guy is not. And so if you're listening, I would encourage everybody to continue to build your local referral sources, find your clients that way. That's something that's feasible, that's scalable, that you can do, that you can control, and you can be one of the solutions and not part of the problem. So.
Yeah, I mean, again, like we keep saying on this podcast, marketers ruin everything, right? And eventually, no matter what happens, the marketers will find a way to, when they switch things, they'll find a way to ruin the new way things are going to happen, right? And part of the fun and challenge of marketing for all companies is always being able to be malleable and be changing and be able to find the new way to be effective. And so, like we've been saying on here for the past few months, is we're actually fine with all the changes because we know that regardless of what happens, we're honest. We follow the rules. We're a lot more efficient and frankly do things better than a lot of our competitors. So we already know that we're going to come out ahead by doing that. And so I'm really looking at the opportunity of us being able to really execute on some of the things that we've been doing over the past couple of years and really be able to kick the marketing up and generate our own stuff. We like to say we like to eat our own dog food. We're going to make the dog food. We're going to go find the ingredients, and then we're going to be able to feed it to our dogs as well.
I remember doing that years ago. I mean, I got in the business in 2007, and every year I've been buying all these domains, remember? And I have now hundreds and hundreds of all these domains, everything from back in the day from Trump's Medicare to, you name it, just hundreds of websites where we can, gen from. So it finally will be paying off kind of investments that we've done over the years. I think more than anything is going to yield results this year, next year, and these next coming years. So it'll be good.
Yeah, it was funny. You mentioned Trump's Medicare. It reminded me of something that we talked about on one of our calls today where, basically no politicians, Republicans or Democrats, really want to touch or disrupt Medicare at all. It's kind of this hot potato where seniors on both sides, don't want to have their benefits messed with by either party. And so it's always kind of that political hot potato of pointing the finger of which one they can try to blame is going to take away their benefits or their Social Security. That's always an amusing political ball that gets punted back and forth that I think is funny.
It is, and I think there's this conundrum of even Republicans right now, they don't want to be, I guess, guilty or perceived as promoting overpayment to carriers, right? So right now, there's this whole back and forth with the elections coming up this year where Democrats are saying hey, we're way overspending in Medicare and Medicare Advantage and this, that, and the other, and we need to rein this in and audit these payments, and of course the Republicans are kind of we don't want to be perceived as wanting to kick back all these extra dollars to big corporations. So I don't know if I want to stop that either. And so there's just this, they're looking at each other there's this standoff kind of happening right now. So I do think that this is a very weird year. I think it's probably about as weird as we've seen in 15
we just
years,
need to start an advantage
it.
plan that's called support for Ukraine and Israel and Gaza and Taiwan.
We seem to always find money for that.
and $1 for every PM goes to support the
my Tom shoes or something.
Then, yeah, exactly. And then we'll have the top Medicare funded plan. We'll be able to get all the dollars from both sides of the political spectrum there.
No kidding. So. But hey, since we're talking about lead gen, we were talking about all these regulations, do we want to talk about the wild west in the ACA or the individual marketplace too, and the no contact leads and all that as well?
Let's kind of wrap up. So, in theory, it's kind of just everybody is going to have to find their new way to get in front of these consumers. You're going to have lead sources and all these TPMOs, these third-party marketing organizations are really having to reinvent themselves, and we're starting to see them really suffering their quality, their volume, as they're trying to make these adjustments. And so, a good lead source or an FMO or a partner is going to be critical. But like Dan said too, if I was a field agent, I'd be out hitting the streets again, building those local relationships, finding free or low-cost lead sources that can be referring you. It's almost like I said, marketers ruin everything, and sometimes go back to the very basics, go back to the grassroots. As everything goes tech, as everything goes AI, as everything goes whatever, a lot of times going back to small and simple things, what used to work 20 years ago, a lot of times are even more effective, you know? And so I think that that's a key takeaway there. Before we transition into that was another big thing that a lot of people talked about that conference at ICMG was anybody that's in the ACA space is really kind of had whiplash with all of the ACA AOR agent of record changes. And, you know, for those of you who may be Medicare only, we kind of went through this evolution with the AOR's agent of record changes 10 years ago.
With Medicare.
Medicare. And so we're seeing these things cyclically happening in ACA a decade later. And that's been one of the things that's been really chaotic, and it got really bad right before open enrollment ended. Was everybody was able to just go in and squat on another policy, and there's just kind of this nightmare scenario with people having multiple consent and being able to revoke consent.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it more specifically. So, because I think some people like listening are going to understand what we're talking about, others not. What's kind of happening in the industry is the ACA kind of came out last year and said, the marketplace plans, and said, hey, you now have to get somebody's consent to enroll them. That's a novel idea, right? Like that's great.
How did we do it before?
Yeah. Oh, so you just sign people up without them ever consenting? Yes. Okay. So now people have to give consent. So what the marketers or the lead companies did is they went out and have like built out, you know, funnels essentially, or landing pages with, you know, BRCs, like web BRCs, where you can leave your information, fill out this. And of course people are putting in their first name, last name, phone number, email, you know, their particulars.
And each carrier has a different process for what they're considering consent and what is approved.
But vendors are out there like building these lead gen websites and getting consumers at the end with the BRC form to put consent, to sign it, say, yes, I give my consent. And of course, the lead companies are doing everything they should from a compliance perspective and saying, we can share your information with multiple parties, affiliates, blah, 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 blah. The person fills out their information, and let's say that lead vendor sells it to 7 people. Now, all 7 of those people who paid money have legitimate consent on that lead to enroll you in a plan, because you put down your information, you signed it, you said, I agree for them to be able to sign me up for a plan. So then now 7 different parties all have that information, and they're like willy-nilly, like, I'm going to sign up Bob Johnson for this plan. So
and the agent, let's say there's a local agent that actually signed them up on a plan initially. That agent has consent and thinks it's their policy and their client. And that person also called into a call center and saw a number and gave their their consent to that person, and that call center and that person also thinks they own that right and that policy and have consent.
And so what's been able to happen is now you have all these people, 4, 5, 6 different agencies, agents, everybody else saying, that's mine, that's mine, that's mine. And they're all just logging into portals and being like, nope, click a button, change it back to me. Nope, that's mine. And we've seen it. We've seen the same person in like a 30-day cycle changing like 17 times back and forth between who's the agent of record. And it's unsustainable. It's not at all. And so I think that's the bad thing that's happening right now that's kind of ruining the ACA marketplace, that obviously has made its way all the way up to Health and Human Services. Then they're looking at making changes, and they're trying to see from the carrier level. I think the carriers are trying to implement policies to change it. You know, I'll point to Ambetter specifically, where they said, hey, we're just, whatever it is at the first of the year in January, we're going to lock it in, and whoever the agent of record is locked for the whole calendar year, which makes sense. I don't agree with it that it's a perfect policy, but it's a step in the right direction. It's far better than where it was before, where, you know, willy-nilly anybody could just click in and say, yeah, that's my policy, change it back to me.
Yeah.
So there's improvements happening, but that's to kind of give more context and information. That's what's been happening in the ACA marketplace. Imagine this world, and this is what's been happening. Bob Johnson fills out something on the internet months ago, wants help with health insurance. Some broker gets it, signs them up for an Aetna plan. The next month, you know, they get Aetna ID cards in the mail for their health insurance. The very next month, some other broker that had consent as well put them onto a Blue Cross plan. And then the very next month, somebody signed them up for a United Healthcare plan. And they've had 3 different insurance carriers 3 months in a row. They don't know who the agent is. They don't know who did it.
They don't know how to revoke
and they're
consent.
like, how do I stop this?
Yep.
You know? Yeah.
So it's gonna start getting very noisy very quick. And we predicted this was going to happen last year. We kind of thought that it would take the rest of this calendar year to play out, but it actually happened way faster and way more chaotic than we thought. Remember, marketers eventually ruin everything. And again, not just marketers, but also as we're complaining to carrier partners and they're trying to fix it, they're kind of going, well, technically this rule is this way, and we're actually complaining to Health and Human Services and CMS, and they're going, well, this is the policy. We can't really do anything about it. So again, because there's lack of clarity, because there's lack of enforcement at the top and rules, there's a lot of ambiguity.
Right.
And wherever there's ambiguity, there's going to be a lot of problems and there's going to be a lot of chaos.
So to give some people some specific examples, we had one carrier where we had it was like on January 31st, or excuse me, December 31st, we had like from 10 p.m. to midnight, we had like 800 policies, like AOR back to one particular NPN. And it's like, oh, wow, pardon my French, holy shit, wow, that's a highly productive agent. In, 20 minutes, they did 800 AORs in 20 minutes. That's impressive.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of stuff. And when you report it up to Health and Human Services and you say, hey, we actually legitimately call these people. We actually talk to them. We ask, they do a needs analysis.
We have recorded calls or a form signed
We talked to them about their plans and they wanted this silver one and not this bronze or XYZ. We actually did an enrollment for this person. And they go, well, and so we'll make a complaint and say, this person did none of that. They basically just went in, clicked buttons and stole everything. This is fraud. And they go, well, they are providing, we followed up on it, we asked, and that person bought a lead where the consumer consented. So, I mean, what do you want us to do? And I'm like, I don't know. Have us be insurance agents and like ask questions and gather information and recommend and advise plans?
Yeah, so imagine that mess. And then they're like, well, did the consumer report it? And so then the consumer doesn't really know what's going on, has to try to figure out who do I call? How do I complain on somebody? Where am I? What's my situation?
Did you call the State Department of Insurance?
Yeah, what am I supposed to do?
I tracked down 800 of those people that did that and tried to get all 800 of them to call the State Department of Insurance.
Yeah, I mean, it's complicated. It's going to, and that's kind of going on at the top. Now, some of you guys that are like in smaller, more stable vanilla markets where you have local regional carriers, there's less chaos. You probably aren't experiencing that near to the level that people are nationally and doing high volume or that have agencies or call centers. But you're probably wondering, how are a few of my policies getting picked off? Why am I writing these, Martha and Bob Johnson down the street and I keep losing it. It keeps getting AOR to somebody else. These are the reasons why. And so, we're working on it with Health Sherpa and our great partnership with them, what they're doing to do it, like universal revoking of consent and things like that. And so there's just, we know how the end result pans out. We've been through this story before where carriers just start going, we're not going to do AOR. It's going to be this complicated process, or because what happens is agents who are obsessed with just doing AORs, they're actually not good agents. Right. They're lazy agents who are just trying to steal and squat on business. Yeah. And that's what happened in Medicare was it got to the point where when being an agent of record was a thing, basically instead of you having to go find a new person, help that person, grow that carrier's block of business and help new people, they would just go around and try to find people who were already on these plans and be like, well, if you don't have somebody else, I'd like to be the person that represents you. Well, sign this form or whatever.
And from the carrier perspective, what value is that? They already had the member. And in sometimes, carriers or payers, however you want to describe them, they'll have different distribution channels, right? Some people self-enroll on their website. Some people call their own internal call center. Some people, a broker signed them up and then the broker died and they didn't have to pay broker commissions anymore or XYZ. But, the reality is they're having to take that same piece of business and then operate all these internal processes to change agent of record and pay this person. And all they're doing is spending time, money, effort, and resources to administer this exact same member they already have. So it's just kind of like a loss. Like it's It's just time not well spent for the carrier or the payer.
Yeah. So what's going to be the solution, right? It's going to be a couple of things. The government will eventually start tightening up some of the rules and regulations, and there will be some complaints coming from the carriers. We're already seeing that for a lot of people, bad actors, and we're even hearing carriers are actually starting to do CTMs, just the same complaints to Medicare, complaints to CMS. The same thing that they do on the Medicare side we're seeing more of those on the ACA side. Mm-hmm. So you're going to start seeing the bad actors, the people who have been able to take advantage of a broken system, that they're going to start getting weeded out of the industry, and they're going to start course correcting that out. So the government's going to start correcting it. The carriers are going to start correcting it. Consumers are going to start correcting it, because eventually it's going to be like, I just need to be able to use my freaking insurance.
But to set the right expectation, I do believe that a lot of these changes, it's going to take 2 to 3 years before it really like shakes out. So just for those of you who are like in the trenches, like selling, individual or ACA plans, I think that after, again, I always hope these podcasts like age very well. And I'm like, I was so right. I think the pendulum is always swinging back and forth of like compliance and regulation. I'm hoping that we're near the end of like a really rigorous, CMS oversight and regulation for Medicare. And I do think we're going to see more of that on ACA. And I think that they're going to shift that eye of Sauron from Medicare to, ACA. And I think that'll be more the focal for the next year or two in reining this in. And I do think those guardrails will get in place. And I think it's going to be good. And I think it'll shake out to end in a good spot. But I do predict like a little bit of AOR policies changing, and this carrier changing this process, and blackout periods, and you do need a wet signature for this. There's going to be a lot of these process changes over the next year or two, so kind of plan on that.
Yeah. I was talking about, the shared responsibility between the government and the carriers and the consumer, and then the agents as well, right? Because we as agents, what can we do, right? What can we do to navigate these waters? Because like we're talking about, the ironic part is we have more compliance and more oversight and more eyes and more heat in the industry than we've ever had before, but yet we also have more chaos and more turmoil, and it's very interesting and ironic how that happens. But what is the antidote for that is you as an agent being able to go get good business, be a good agent, solicit good business, offer value to your clients, clearly explain to them, some of these market conditions and why these things are. And then guess what? They'll know that you're an expert. They'll know that you're a person that explains to them all these things that we're talking about on these podcasts, or can answer their questions as to why this is messed up or why this functions this way. And they're going to want to work with you for the rest of their life. Yep. You can help them on ACA until they age into Medicare. And you're going to be able to build clients that you're going to be able to work with for possibly decades.
Yeah. And I'm not in the trenches like I used to be back in the marketplace, genning my own business and being at the kitchen table and selling on the phone. I did all that. But I will tell you, if I were doing that these days, like I would not be putting my information on like a website, like with my personal information. I would have to have a gun to my head to have me put like, here's my name, my first name, last name, address, phone number. Yes, please click the box. Please submit. A gun to my head, because once you do that, it is just like out there. And if I'm a broker and you're listening to this, I would be telling every one of your clients, for the love of God, don't do that. Don't put your information in. Call me. You will never escape the death spiral of like marketers and agencies and agents calling you and consents, and don't do it.
The genie's never going back in the bottle. And we were strategizing for marketing, and we were talking about how we buy things, and like we were talking about filling out consent forms and lead forms. And I was saying, me personally, like you said, I'm not filling out any web form on anything unless I am prepared to be digitally accosted for that one product and deal with the actual mental energy that it's going to take.
I will spend 30 minutes looking for different websites, a contact phone number. I'll drive in my car an hour somewhere if I want a product. I will do almost anything except for give them all my information.
Yeah, and it is funny because we were talking about it too, and I'm like, well, I actually would rather go almost back in time and make a good old-fashioned phone call to this person and try to talk to a real human being and just kind of like vet out or ask out my questions first before I decide if I want to actually proceed with giving this person information. Because then I'm like, I already know the second I give you my information, I'm in your CRM. I'm going to be in your CRM that goes to this other guy's CRM.
You're in an automated campaign.
I'm in an automated campaign, and then I'm going to say no, and then I'm going to get put back into this other rewarming campaign.
You're going to get sold to another affiliate that you have to opt out of. Yep.
And then I'm just going to go, all it just does is further buries me in the digital architecture of getting accosted,
Yeah.
But our poor seniors, they didn't know that for a lot of time, and they went around opting in to win mattresses and played, I want to
cruise or whatever.
I need help with my insurance and Medicare. And, you do that a few times as the way it's been in the past, and your information is packaged and sold down the river.
Enter to win a Visa of $50 or $100. Yeah.
Yeah. Possibly hundreds or thousands of times. And, so it is interesting that as all of these things kind of play out, like I said, a lot of things that worked in the past are starting to work again. It's almost like go old school to be efficient in some of these marketing methodologies.
Yeah. To that point, before we wrap, can we change gears to that last topic of the funding cut next year and agents and agencies and distribution, what that looks like with it?
Yeah.
So before we run out of time, the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I touched on this on our agency owner call. So like once a month, I'll get on with all of our sub-agency partners, who are running teams of anywhere from 5 or 10 agents to sometimes hundreds of agents. And we talked about like the nature of the industry and where it's going for 2025 and what we're already seeing. And if you're paying attention, you've already all observed it as well, that a lot of these carriers, like they know these funding and reimbursement cuts and what's happening. And, there's a huge drop in funding for 2024 and 2025 from previous years in Medicare Advantage, for example. And so in preparation for that, we saw last year, and I will name some, like United Healthcare, for example, specifically, they had RIFs, big reductions in force. Humana is going through a huge reduction in force right now. Cigna, let go of all of their captive sales agents, and of course they've divested now and sold. And so all these carriers have been looking ahead and seeing the funding environment, and they're already making these adjustments. And the biggest takeaway is that in order to stay lean, the irony of all this is that CMS is talking about making cuts to broker other alternative forms of payments. They're talking about cutting payments to FMOs. And at the same time, the carriers are slashing their overhead and their broker managers and broker directors and X and Y and Z. And what that's doing is across the country, it may have been that you were in a marketplace where you're like, hey, let me go meet with my local Aetna broker manager or whoever, and I'm going to get some training and learn how to use their platform and system and XYZ, and maybe I'll come up with a strategy to sell. And anyways, I feel like a lot of FMOs were using carriers as a crutch to, do some of their heavy lifting for them and sending their brokers to, these carriers and relying on them to train up their people and support them. That's not going to be an option. So just because what we're observing is there's just far less resource there. There's far less people. They're not going to be there. And so essentially, I think that for us, it's great. It just, again, signals that into the marketplace that FMOs are really critical, that the role that we play is very critical. And we know the kind of needs that agents have and agencies, and we're positioned very well to support them. But it also means that for when I talk specifically to GAs and MGAs and smaller agencies, it's like, there has to be somebody in the industry who's like, let me show you exactly how to sell. Let me take you to an appointment. Let me put you on the phone and show you how I'm doing a compliant sales transaction. To hold their hand and actually guide them and teach somebody how to do the business is going to be more critical than ever before. So I think that those are going to be the agencies that this year and next year and these next couple of years, going back to kind of like old school, those are the people who are going to be valuable. And I think brokers are going to be looking for those kind of agents and agencies to align with to solve that problem, because the carrier's not going to do it.
Yep. To that point, with agents and agencies, and I'll just say it's kind of very similar with the agent population out there. A lot of times people don't want to do the work. They want to do all these other things that's not actually the thing that gets them the sales. And that's the same thing with agency owners too. Mm-hmm. And like Dan's saying, if you want to grow an agency, you've got to be able to go find these people, take them around, teach them how to make, to do things in the industry, show them how to do the things. And yeah, you've got to be able to spend your time and invest your effort, your sweat equity into those people. And then they need to catch that fire. They need to become a producer. And then you go do that again. And when you grow from 5 to 10 people like that, that's how you can grow an agency. It's been interesting to me. I don't think, and maybe you know better, Dan, but I don't know of an agency that's ascended from like an agent to a top of hierarchy like us, behind us or after us. Maybe, there's a couple. I don't want to really give some shine to some people out there, but there's maybe a handful of few ones. But part of the reason why that is there's so few people that are willing to put in that effort, that sweat equity to go generate real value in the marketplace and honestly be able to kind of share some of their money and their leads and their resources. And we were just talking about it with what you did is, be willing to forego some of those profits and reinvest it into the business instead of just, taking all those early agency dollars. A lot of people aren't willing to do that. You've got to be able to go and create real value in the marketplace right now. That's how if somebody's willing to do that, if you're an agent out there and you're like, hey, how do I have desires to grow an agency beyond what I want to do right now, that's how you do it. That's the game plan. You go like Dan did it back in the day, find 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, replicate yourself, teach them how to do it. There's we have a couple of our agents C's with us that are doing a really good job of that right now because they are doing it the tried and true way. It's
a big disparity. There's agencies who are doing, and again, going back to it, I think it's value of saying, hey, person XYZ, come to my training that I'm doing, my boot camp, come with me. I have a ride along that I'm doing. Come with me. I'm doing the work. I'm successful. I'm making money. If you want to learn how to do what I do, then come to this training. Those are the people who are doing kind of that hand-holding support, or, hey, log on to my Zoom or whatever else. Let me teach you. Here's the call scripting. I think it's very lazy that a lot of agency owners are doing, saying like, hey, here's some theory. Here's what you need to go do. Go and talk to like pharmacists. Oh yeah, go talk to a funeral home. Oh yeah, go do community meetings. Go talk to your local broker manager. It's not enough to just kind of throw out some vague ideas or theories to brokers and then hope that they're going to succeed. That's not enough. It needs to be hand-holding and very specific examples with very specific instructions on how to execute certain initiatives, and a lot of oversight, and then even follow-up with brokers like we used to do. And I used to follow up with agents all the time and say, hey, let's have our business planning session. Do you have time or do you have money or do you have both? Let's work on this plan together. Let's build this plan. Let's build your immediate opportunities, your short-term opportunities, and your long-term opportunities. Here's 20 ideas. Which of these ideas are actually like you feel like are in your lane that you're comfortable doing that you can go execute? Perfect. Let's pick those. And then, you'd kind of set it. How can I help you execute these? Then you would follow up with them. And then going back to accountability and be like, hey, it's been 2 months. How has that been working? Oh, I didn't do any of it. Oh, okay. Yep. Well, then I don't know how to help you, but I gave it a good go.
Yeah, I think to your point too, with a lot of the carriers kind of pulling back on some of those resources, I think for mid-level agencies, a lot of times they were able to kind of just, oh, well, here's a retail opportunity provided to me from a carrier partner. Here's this, go work at this Walmart or this Kroger or whatever. And they were just kind of, squatting on opportunities and plugging people in. A lot of those things are getting pulled back and peeled away. And so you need to figure out how you're going to go teach those agents how to create real value and real leverage. And if you can do so, there's a tremendous opportunity for you in the marketplace right now. And if you can't, a lot of agents, we'll see people that want to be agencies, and what they really want is they want to find some sort of click funnel, digital funnel that recruits people and places them into their downline where they don't have to do anything, and that person makes them money. It's almost like this isn't an MLM. This isn't, I'm trying to think of a funny MLM that
Zango Juice or Amway
any of Amway. It isn't this. We're not trying to place people into your downline so they can make their...
Yeah, I think that's important too. The game is not, let me build up my leg of people or whatever, where I can just like not do anything and make money. I mean, we always tell people, like, if you want to be an agency owner, that's because you really like to be like a manager. You like mentoring people. You like being a leader, and you like developing people, and that's how you want to, and you enjoy spending your time, is teaching, training, mentoring. At the end of the day, a lot of people, when you talk to them, they're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to train these people. And you're like, yes, you're a great salesperson.
You're a great solopreneur. You're a great solo producer.
Salesperson, but apparently you don't understand what it's like to be an agency owner and train and manage and help people. So
yeah, so there's two sides of it, right? Create massive value. There's lots of opportunity for you, and for us, and for those agents who are doing that and finding ways to do that in this current environment. Those are the ones that are going to stand out, like, you know, just in the landscape and marketplace like crazy, like hopefully we're doing right now. And to everybody else, they're going to continue to struggle, and we're fine with that in the industry. We're fine with the tough times weeding out some of those people. Yeah,
agreed. So I think we kind of went all over the place today with this, which I'm fine with. Actually, we love just kind of the discussion, and part of the things that we want to do with this podcast, obviously, is just, it's interesting how quickly things change in the industry, and now more than ever. And that's what I keep talking to carrier partners about, is that, you know, change is inevitable. It's always happening in the industry. It always has, but just it's exacerbated, and the magnitude, how quickly things are changing, is more so now than ever. And so I think we do kind of meander around on the podcast episodes sometimes, but that's okay, because it's like we'll have a topic from 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago, and we're like, well, it's already kind of moved quicker than we thought.
Yeah, that already resolved, or that's already moved on from there.
Yep, exactly. So since we're coming up on time, any last thoughts before we wrap?
No, I think we got out a lot of the thoughts that were rattling around in my mind. I think you know, people hopefully appreciate these kind of more up to the minute updates sprinkled in with, you know, baked in consistent content. So
yep, absolutely. All right, catch you all next week.